Hi, now this lecture which we are doing is something again maybe a bit not sports science or strength and conditioning related, but we can call it maybe a bit of gym related. So what is this chapter about? Have a look at the picture and hopefully you get some idea what does the picture show. Okay, now you've had a look at the picture, you've read what's there. Now this is not my subject expertise really speaking. I'm not some expert on what is done and what is not done, but I'm aware of what happens, and that awareness is what I'm going to share with you guys so that you all are also equally aware so that you're not lost when the topic of anabolic steroids comes in. Now anabolic steroids, what are they, what is the chemical structure? Again, like I said, I'm not a biochemistry expert, nor have I used, nor do I prescribe, nor do I believe in using those. So I have no clue, but I would want you guys to know that when you all are training in a gym as a strength and conditioning specialist and you see people who you suspect to be using, and it is of course their choice whether they want to use or not, but what is it that they are? At least you should have some base idea. And because anabolic steroid usage does happen to enhance performance, to build muscles, and also sometimes in sport, but it is generally more of a gym thing, like how powerlifting, bodybuilding, weightlifting are associated with a gym. The office for these people is the gym. So also for many people who are into this, the area of their office kind of becomes this. So we can look at a gym as a common office, like how you have nowadays these what they call co-working areas, where you have a big building and various company people can kind of work in that. So you can look at the gym as something like that. The gym is not only for you to do your strength and conditioning, depending on which area you are, which gym you have to use. It would be used by people of different requirements and different needs. And something that exists and you should know about is anabolic steroids. So anabolic steroids are used a lot of times by many to build muscle, to have a body which looks aesthetically pleasing, which is something which has a lot of hypertrophy, big muscles, because that is what they desire. And then also some people use it for sports performance, in sports especially such as athletics or other sports which require a lot of power, weightlifting and so on and so forth, even swimming sometimes. So now for sports performance, the first question is very simple. Can somebody use anabolic steroids and improve their sports performance? You should know the answer to this. Okay, I hope you are not naive enough that you need an answer about this. Okay, now for muscle building, if somebody is using it, okay, and they are planning to use it, or rather they are using it, is there some body which says you shouldn't? The answer to that is no, okay, because it is your personal use and there is no organization as such where there's very strict rules and Olympic movement, so there's no clear guidelines about using it for people who want to build muscle. So we'll get to the next few points which explain a bit more in detail about this very aspect of gym usage. So in this slide, you can see that anabolic steroids myths are given and also some realities. So what's the first reality that we have to understand and very important? The first reality is that anabolic steroids do produce results. Okay, so you can see this first line, right? So this is very important. They do produce results. So sometimes there's this myth and some people would say that to be able to build, say, a very muscular body with a lot of muscle and something where there's low body fat percentages and they're very shredded and somebody has a good six pack and really big as well at the same time. Some people will say that, oh, you just need to train hard, you need to diet and you can do it. Anabolic steroids are not required. You can still get those results without. Now this is where there's a myth, and sometimes people say this maybe just to be in denial or maybe sometimes due to lack of knowledge. So anabolic steroids, when it comes to using for muscle gain, they do produce results. So that is the first thing we need to understand. Otherwise, if they didn't produce results, there wouldn't be a problem. We wouldn't look at them, or there wouldn't be a discussion at all. If steroids didn't do anything, then why is there a ban? Why are there bodies which are there, such as the World Anti-Doping Agency, uh, the National Anti-Doping Agency in India? Why do they exist? It's because there is a serious problem of people who using it get an unfair advantage over others who don't. So this is the first thing we have to understand and accept. So once we accept, then we know what to do and what not to do. Okay. Now coming to the second point, anabolic steroids do have negative side effects as well. So again, here they do have is very important to know, because again here there's some misconceptions, some myths, and sometimes maybe those who use it spread these myths, or sometimes those who have never used it, they spread these myths. So some people would say that okay, if you use anabolic steroids, if you know how to use it, then you won't have side effects. Okay, and some people will say that if you use maybe anabolic steroids from good companies, you won't have side effects. So there's a lot of myths. Okay, there's obviously a lot of myths that people have about this, and because this is something which is not regulated, when somebody uses it for muscle gain, there's not a body which regulates and says this is what you should not do. So generally, almost you can say every expert out there has his or her own views on what it does, what it doesn't do. But when we talk about it, as strength and conditioning specialists, we always have to go with the medical view, because the medical view is a worldwide view. It is not belonging to one person who believes so and so, or it doesn't belong to one region where somebody says that steroids are bad in America and that they're okay in Australia, or they're bad in India and they're okay maybe in some other country. Steroids in general are banned, okay, and there's a common rule which applies across sports, across continents. So we need to remember this part, okay, that they do have negative side effects, medically proven. Sometimes when you go on online forums and you read and people talk about it, some people would say that it's not that if you use steroids you will die, and then some people have this sort of argument. They'll say that there are people out there who are smoking, okay, there are people out there who are chewing maybe pan or tobacco, or there are people out there who drink excessively, and that also kills a lot of people, and that steroids do not just kill you just like that. So the answer to that is smoking does have negative side effects as well. Steroids also have negative side effects. Because one has doesn't mean the other thing is okay, or it has less. So it's simple, something has negative side effects, we have to accept. The fact that it produces results also we have to accept. Because if this was not the case, then we wouldn't be having a discussion on it, or there wouldn't be boards and bodies overall in the world which are there to regulate and to make sure that it's not used in sport. So sometimes these sort of arguments come in, and as an S&C coach whose office is in the gym, okay, that's your workplace. When students ask you, you need to be knowing about these. So if somebody says that, I can become as big as a Mr. Olympia and I'm not going to use any anabolic steroids, you need to have an answer to that. So this is a very sensitive topic, because this is something which is done, it's almost like an underground thing which is not open. But the fact that it exists in society and the fact that it exists in gyms is what we have to be aware of. As long as you're aware, it's fine. Now nobody is saying that people who use anabolic steroids are bad people and those who don't use are good people. Nobody is saying that. Nobody has a right to decide what somebody else does or eats. If somebody decides to do it, and they use and they build a body and they do whatever, that's their choice, as long as it is not illegal, so then that is where people obviously might get into problems. And if it is illegal, then there's a body in government like the police, then the criminal departments, there's law. So they will do the job. As professionals, we have to be very careful of what's your opinion. Like I've said earlier, we shouldn't become fans or proponents of one style of training or one style of behavior, that these are bad people, we are good people, or my belief is the best, or this is the best lifestyle. Okay, so different lifestyles exist, people do, you have to be aware of them, and like said earlier, choose the best, discard the rest. This is what makes a difference when it comes in the long term of how successful you'll be. Okay, so anabolic steroids, like I said, the second point, they do have side effects, medically proven. There's enough evidence of this. Cigarette smoking also has side effects, and chewing tobacco also has, and so on and so forth. But that does not mean that one has something which is okay and the other doesn't. Okay, so we have to understand this, and the negative side effects include, in some extreme cases, even deaths. And a lot of times, it is suggested, and that's why I say suggested, because I cannot make a definitive statement on this, but it is suggested that some very famous professional bodybuilders who have passed away this has happened because of their excessive steroid usage. Now, how true is that? What was the actual cause? I am not the guy to decide, but they do have side effects, and death can be one of them. But did it happen because of that? That's let's leave that open to discussion and debate for those who are interested. We're just interested in knowing that there are side effects, and those side effects are various. You can do some reading on that. Okay, one of the questions for this would be based on the side effects as well. What are the negative side effects? Okay, I would suggest that you go through, do some research, what are the negative side effects of using anabolic steroids. Okay. Now the next point, anabolic steroids are illegal, okay, to be used. As far as I'm aware, in India, they are illegal to be used, and one cannot just go to a pharmacy and say, I need this. They have to be prescribed by a doctor. Now, something we also have to be aware is anabolic steroids are not drugs and bad. We're not talking here of maybe cocaine or some drug which is used purely for something where they want to have fun. People don't use anabolic steroids for fun. They are used for certain reasons, right? To build muscle and to maybe get a body which is better looking. But they are illegal, and one has to know the law. As far as I'm aware, doctors have to prescribe them, and there is a medical usage for them. There's definitely use for anabolic steroids which is done medically, and there's a safe limit that is done. Now, normally when people use these for muscle building, they use a lot more than what is the medical requirement. And the other problem with this is that many of them do this on their own. The knowledge about using this is more what is sometimes called the bro science. Bro science is a very sort of funny term which is used to describe a lot of things in the gym. Like when somebody says, this exercise is good and it builds muscle, and this exercise does this. So sort of in that cool English language, when people talk about it, they'll say like, bro, this exercise is really good. You need to be using this for this particular muscle. It makes a massive difference, bro. So that is the reason why it's called bro science. It has no validity, it has no basis, it has no reasoning, but it is called bro science because of the fact that it's all these sort of bros. And bros are what? It's a shortened term for brothers. So it's like, you're my brother, and in Hindi the transformation, or rather the translation would be, like, भाई ये एकदम सही है, इससे तो एकदम डोले सही बन जाते भाई, ये exercise करके देखो भाई. So bhai and bro, these are the sort of terms. So bro science may be translated in Hindi can become bhai ka gyan. Okay, so a funny thing to note, but yes, so it's like that. It's just that brotherhood where everybody talks about, no basis, nothing, just sometimes based on a lot of fallacies. So they are illegal, okay, and they are banned in the Olympic sports, and there's testing done in some sports. such as swimming. Post a race, depending on who is asked, they will take the swimmer, get a urine sample, and they will then check that, okay, especially when people are giving very good performances. And of course we know so many famous cases, in across the world, right from early days, from Ben Johnson, when he was a sprinter who created a record, and then over time it was found that he was using anabolic steroids to, you know, improve his speed, and he was so fast. So it does exist, okay, but they are illegal and they are banned. So if ever, let's say a student has to ask you, you're working with, let's assume, um, maybe athletics, and which is obviously an Olympic sport. So an athlete, if they ask you like, what do you think? I'm just saying this is a hypothetical situation. If an athlete asks you about your view to use them because they know that it makes a difference, and they ask you that, what if I take and I ask somebody who's taken it, and then I use something to maybe, flush them out of the system, like the term they use, or that I do these for just a short while and then I stop. What should be your answer? Your answer should be very simple. The answer is no. And the second thing is that this is not your expertise and you wouldn't suggest this. And it's sometimes important to note such conversations when they happen. And it is also important that as an S&C coach, you make the technical coach aware, and if there's administrators, they need to also be made aware of such discussions. Now, why is this? Because let's assume, for argument's sake, the player goes ahead and uses it, and they end up getting, into problems because of that, and they are either banned from participating or whatever. Now, the team that is along with this person, they cannot say that they were not aware of it. And a lot of times this can lead to a lot of bad reputation, because then it becomes that, oh, this person or this coach, the strength coach, the physiotherapist, the nutritionist, all the team, they were involved in this. So obviously, that leads to a lot of unnecessary problems, a lot of unnecessary doubts, questioning. When this topic happens, you have to be extremely clear. This is one thing which is a complete no-go zone. And this has to be made very clear if ever this topic comes up. You have to know that what you do and what you don't do. This is not something which is even open to discussion. You have to be extremely clear about this. Okay. Now coming to the next point, which is more to do with sort of the regular public rather than sports people. Now you often see, maybe in the entertainment industry, sometimes people have these amazing bodies. You see many males who are just ripped, and when I say ripped, the term is used for them when they are cut, the whole body is like, again, cut. For those who are not into this, does not mean that they have a physical cut. It means that their bodies are very well defined. So it's called cuts, when somebody has cuts in their body. So these cuts are from the muscle striations. So you see this in the entertainment industry sometimes, and there are what's called transformations which happen. And some of these transformations are very, very impressive. You would see somebody who looked a certain way for a while, and then you see that over a period of time, these people just look extremely different. Okay. Now, when they look that good, and when they are that sort of, good with their bodies, okay, and they are that good with their look, and this happens in around 3 months, 4 months, sometimes 6 months. Now, a question I would ask, and which is a thinking question, which you have to think about it, and then maybe you have to have an answer. Now, there are many people in the gym. If you go to any gym, you'll see different people lifting different weights, right? And some people work very hard, they train, they lift, they do regular exercises. And then you have somebody, when you hear of a transformation in 3 months, and then you'll obviously sometimes see a story, how they worked hard and they got transformed, and they built this sort of amazing body where there was this transformation. Why is it that those others who were training couldn't do this? Maybe this person did it in 3 months and they did. Fair enough. Someone might say this person has worked hard. Okay, hard work. In open and close inverted commas. Hard work gave them that body. So we can say these guys work less. Why not in 6 months? Why not in a year do they build this body? Think about this, okay? So transformations which happen, we have to have a mind to think and to be aware. To think that you just go to a gym and you train and you can build muscles, okay, just because you do bicep curls, your arms will grow and you will look amazing, and just in 3 months you change just like this. Especially, it's interesting to know that these transformations happening, the physique transformations happening with people who have extremely busy lifestyles. Many of them who don't even have the discipline to wake up at a certain time, to follow a good diet, and still these transformations happen. And then there are those who would have great discipline. They'll work out in the morning, then they'll probably go eat right, and still they wouldn't have those physiques. So this is a question for which you have to think. It is not that, I'm trying to pass any judgment anyway, but you should be aware of what happens in the entertainment industry. And many a times, when you see somebody who's built very well, we are not passing a judgment on that person to say that, they are bad or good, but we have to be aware of how this is possible. Because you don't want to be lost for answers when your students ask you these questions. You have to be aware of these. You can't be living in an alternate universe of sport where you just think that I just teach sport, I just teach you how to do push-ups, I teach you how to do a clean and jerk, and that's all I know. And then somebody says, sir, I've been training for so long, why don't I have a body like this particular person who's so famous in maybe this particular entertainment industry, and why can't I have this? I've been training for so long, I eat well. And here again another question for which again you have to get the answer. Athletes, right from swimmers to badminton players, tennis, they train so hard. We know how they train. Cardiovascular endurance, they play, they jump, they're sometimes moving so much, they do everything. Sometimes they have their own physiotherapists, sometimes they have their own personal strength and conditioning coaches. So these are athletes, sometimes some of them who are professional and who are really sort of working, they're eating everything, training so much. Definitely one thing for sure, the average man out there, the standard person who's just training, nor somebody who's in the entertainment industry, definitely both these don't work as hard as athletes. That's for sure. We cannot deny that. Especially we're talking about those in power sports. Maybe not in sports which have less demands on the body. But in power sports, definitely there's a lot more strength. Now in Olympic sports which are tested and where you have these athletes who work hard so much, why don't they have such bodies? How many times have you seen an athlete who has a body which is as maybe you could call it aesthetically pleasing as somebody who has it in the entertainment industry? Why doesn't it happen? Why isn't it so easy? Plus, the other question you have to ask yourself is that athletes are younger. Sometimes you see people at a very late age when the metabolism has slowed down, they make these transformations and they are just looking a whole different level, and these guys are not. Again, we are not here to pass judgments on anybody or anything, but you should know exactly what is happening. So you're aware of it. Okay? You need to be aware of what's happening in your office. Like I said, you walk into a gym. Imagine it's a huge gym. You take your athlete to train there. You take your group of athletes to train there. When they're training, what's happening inside and what's happening around, you need to be aware. Because this is what is done, and where sometimes some things can go wrong. It could be somebody who's like somebody tries a weightlifting movement without knowing about it and maybe not being sort of having any use for that in their particular sport. So same goes with somebody who thinks about anabolic steroids and has no answers. You need to have answers. One, you also need to know this, and you should be aware, and you should be, of course we have a nutrition section on as a course. I would strongly suggest doing that as well, so you know exactly what is the difference. And this is a very, very important point, the difference between anabolic steroids and sports supplements. Are sports supplements anabolic steroids? Answer is no. but can somebody mix certain things and give it to you if you're not aware of which company it is? Yes, then that can happen, and you could still, your athlete could still get uh, tested positive. So you have to be aware of this, okay? And this is why it's important that, when sports supplements are prescribed, as an SNC professional, it is not your job to prescribe. Very simple. You have to be aware. Now, what do I do to make sure that sports supplements that are used by my athletes are correct and they are safe? I make sure, for one thing, that the sources where they get it from are known, and I make sure that that is one risk I will never take and not let them take, because it takes one athlete to take something wrong to spoil your name, to spoil their name of course and their career, but your name as well. So using supplements from reputed companies and knowing the source is important, because it can be a reputed company, and from the time it is produced to the time your athlete gets it, there could be somebody in between, and there are these various reports of how spurious supplements are sold, where sometimes, from what I have heard, and this is again something I've heard and I assume it should be true, because I've heard what they do is they take supplement bottles of top companies, especially protein. They will open it, okay, then they'll reseal. But when they open, they will put crushed anabolic steroid tablets in there. They'll crush it into a very, very fine powder, so you cannot make out. They'll mix it and then they'll sell it. So when it comes to the person who's using it, especially if it's a person who wants to put on muscle mass, they definitely see some good results and some very fast results compared to only using protein powder. So they get very happy, and then because of the fact that the results are fast, they want to buy it again. They're happy, the seller makes money, but they never know what's inside. So this is where these are some of those challenges, that one has to be aware of, okay? That if something is working too good, you also have to be aware maybe why. You also have to be aware that if somebody is using a protein supplement, takes whey protein, are they going to build some huge muscles and are going to become big to the point that they can go and take part in a top competition like the Mr. Olympia just because they take protein powders? Again, this is a question you should ask yourself, because you should be knowing what's the difference between protein and what's the difference between anabolic steroids. Don't mix these two. Parents sometimes have these questions about, what are the two? These two are different, and you need to be having a nutritionist who would tell you the difference. But supplements are safe if they are taken through professional means. So supplements unfortunately sometimes get a bad rep, a lot of times there's bad reputation for supplements, because many parents are worried, because within supplements, just like within exercises, there are some supplements which are very effective, very necessary, very good. Protein supplements, you have your multivitamins, some very basics which most nutritionists would suggest to someone. And then there would be some supplements, okay, which have products inside which are not really the best, and which in sport they would be banned. So we have to understand that there are some products which are available, you can buy in a shop, but they would be banned. Just because you can buy it in a shop doesn't mean in sport it is allowed. So this is where the difference is, and this is where the mistakes happen. People end up using some products which are not correct and not really necessary for them, okay, and then they get maybe tested and then there's a problem. Some people who are maybe really not clever enough would actually then use it knowing that this is bad, and they'll still use, thinking, no, but I want to win. So that can also happen. We have people of different thoughts. Like I said earlier, common sense is not common. So we have to be aware of this, okay, that supplements and anabolic steroids are two different things, and supplements are not wrong nor bad if you know what you're doing and if you have professional advice. Don't just go and buy a supplement because you think that is right, or just because you see something in a magazine and you think this looks better. Okay, you have to be aware of what you're taking, and if you're not aware, then somebody who's qualified, a sports nutritionist, should know, and then they can tell you if it is exactly what you need. If not, if you need, then how much to take and what not to take. So this whole topic. I hope this has helped to clarify, and I hope you are now better informed than what you were earlier. Like I said, I'm not an expert on anabolic steroids. I have no clue how they are taken, what they do with it and stuff, but I know that people take, and I'm aware in some fields it's taken. Am I judgmental of them? Who am I? And who would be you to judge? But you should know that it exists, and you should be aware of what's happening around you. So that was the whole idea behind this course, and hope this has helped you to know what they are. Do more research as well on this, because the questions which will be asked will be based within this lecture, and even some very general knowledge questions. But do read up. You need to know what happens, and you need to know what are the results that one gets, probably why one gets it, and also what are the negative side effects, and so on and so forth. So thank you for listening. Hope this lecture has really helped you, and has made you much more aware of anabolic steroids than what you were. And let's be smart when we are using supplements and when we are choosing exercises as well. Okay, thank you very much.